Welcome to the fifth edition of the Point of View series of talks. For those of you who have been with us from the beginning or in previous editions, welcome back. It's great to see you all again. But if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Please enjoy the coming sessions. For those who could not be with us physically, we are streaming live on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @PointOfViewLagos. Welcome and enjoy. Thank you. I am Oino Ehiremen, and I work with the Benin Foundation. I'll be your anchor for the evening. I'd like to acknowledge our major partners, Alliance Francaise, Macadoniga Center Lagos, Five Cowries Arts Initiative, and the Society of Nigerian Artists. Special thanks to you for joining us to make this event possible. This edition, titled Funding for the Visual Arts, Public and Private Sector Partnership, will be examining recent developments in public and private sector funding support for the creative arts in Nigeria, with special focus on the Creative Industry Financing Initiative, the CIFI, a collaboration between the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Bankers Committee, its neglect of the visual arts industry and promise of creative economic growth. To give the welcome address is Charles Codant, the Director of Alliance Francaise Lagos. A round of applause for him, please.
Mesdames, Messieurs, bonsoir. Bienvenue à l'Alliance Française, Macadoniga Center. I'm the little touch of exotism with my French. You know, it's the only program I don't manage at all, because usually I am the one saying welcome, and then I give the microphone to the organizer. But the organizer is so professional that I'm always the second one now. Just to tell you that it's a real pleasure to have the crème de la crème of arts and culture in Lagos. So it's very important for us. We are very happy to support this program, not only because now the organizer of the program is also our vice president, but because, yes, it is a very important topic, very important platform. And I'm happy to see people from all Africa, from everywhere. My colleague from the Goethe Institute, many people. So I'm very happy, very proud. This place is yours. This place is European. This place is Nigerian. Once again, have a good debate, have a good presentation, and you're always welcome here. Merci beaucoup. Merci.
To officially open the program, the opening remarks to be delivered by the founder and executive director of the Benin Foundation, as well as vice president, board of directors at Alliance Francaise Lagos, as Mr. Hodon just mentioned. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Oliver Emowo.
Thank you very much, Uyino. I'd like to start by first thanking Alliance Francaise and all our partners for making Point of View a staple on the creative arts calendar in Nigeria. I'd also like to thank all the distinguished speakers, the press, the audience, and our board of trustees. Ms. Oputo is in the audience here. I'd like to give a big thank you for her support over the years for the Benin Foundation. Today's edition of Point of View is the fifth, and it seeks to raise funding for the visual arts through public and private sector partnership. Well, I'll leave the distinguished speakers and panelists to do justice to that topic. But for us at the foundation, it's not about art for aesthetic value alone, but it's how art can shape society positively. Thank you for your attention. Sit back and enjoy proceedings.
Thank you very much. To refresh our memories of what the Point of View series is about, let's watch this short video. The Benin Foundation is a non-profit organization that aims to promote and preserve the legacy of celebrated Nigerian artist, scholar, educator, administrator, and statesman, Benin Wo, while increasing the global appreciation of the visual arts in Africa and her related diaspora. Hinged on advocacy, scholarship, and intellectual engagement, the Foundation's three-pronged approach involves promoting, fostering, explaining, protecting, and giving prestige to Enwo's artistic, intellectual, and political legacy, maintaining a diverse multidisciplinary public program of exhibitions, projects, workshops, talks, and lectures, and promoting cross-cultural ties and exchange between established and emerging artists, designers, and curators through international residency. Ongoing initiatives include the Benevolent Distinguished Lectures and Point of View, a monthly series of talks initiated in collaboration with the Society of Nigerian Artists and supported by Alliance Francaise, Macedoniga Center, Lagos. Point of View interrogates the evolving role of the visual arts in addressing pressing issues affecting Africa and the rest of the world. The talks draw from other creative disciplines and such diverse sectors as government, science, and technology to impact policy by raising awareness, advocating for change, and inspiring action. It aims to further encourage support and funding for the visual artist through public and private sector partnership, while ensuring continuing artist professional development and empowerment. On September 17, 2019, the first edition, themed A Case for the Artist Resale Right, advocated for visual artists benefiting from secondary and downstream sales of their works by seeking to establish an effective system for collecting resale royalties and remunerating artists.
SNA can come up tonight with a draft of what they want in activating Section 13. I promise you by Monday next week, I will take the draft and get ministerial approval of the regulation.
On October 15, 2019, the second edition, themed Raising Capital Against High-Value Works of Art, sought to encourage the growing recognition of Nigerian art as a new alternative asset class, while providing a deeper understanding of using art as collateral for lending transactions such as financing business expansions and investments or high-end purchases. It also aimed to support the development of art investment products as well as the diversification of investment portfolios with the integration of art.
The regulatory framework is yet opaque.
All the presentations that you might hear and all the talks that we're giving really do not carry much weight if there's no trust.
On November 22, 2019, the third edition, themed Museums, Tourism and Urban Development, addressed key issues, trends and challenges in Nigeria's cultural tourism sector. Leading architects share their insights on the most innovative construction and design trends, using completed, ongoing and upcoming projects as examples. Museum specialists also shed light on improving visitor experiences, preservation and conservation activities, as well as on the challenges they face, while government authorities highlighted investment opportunities and spoke on museum development and destination marketing.
To begin to start the process of remedying the thefts of the 700 works.
And the image on the right is from one of his descendants, Niyi Fakir, and I took that picture because he works at the National Museum.
On January 24, 2020, the fourth edition, themed Art as a Driver for Environmental Sustainability, advocated for sustainable cities and communities by promoting interdisciplinary collaborations between professionals across such diverse sectors as government, the arts, science and technology. It highlighted the significant role of the visual arts in ensuring policy frameworks that address climate change.
We're endowed with about 1.2 billion people, 43% of which are below the age of 15. Is that not staggering? Like, think about it.
I hope we all enjoyed that. Now that the program is officially opened, we shall begin our talk sessions. To give the first presentation is our first speaker, Uchesi Wunka, who will be speaking on including the visual arts in the promise of creative industry growth, the CFI, and other financial policies. Please let's listen to her introduction as she makes her way to the stage.
A well-experienced banker, Uche Onwoka is the group head of the Creative Industry Group at Bank of Industry BOI. She has also served as a principal manager and headed the credit risk divisions of the bank's risk assets management group. At BOY, Onwuka headed the Treasury and International Operations Division and was pioneer head of the Creative Industry Department, where she supervised the development and successful implementation of the bank's first non-asset-based collateral arrangement for a cinema project and other initiatives within the creative industry. In addition, she supervised the Gender Business and Multilateral Relationship Department, and to her credit, managed the African Growth and Opportunities Act Office. Prior to working at BOY, Onwuka served in many senior capacities at ABC Merchant Bank, Mani Bank, and First City Monument Bank. Uche Onwuka holds a bachelor's degree in Economics and Statistics from the University of Benin and an MBA in Banking and Finance from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Please join me in welcoming her as she makes her way to the stage.
Good evening, all. Thank you for having me. I'm Uche Cynthia Onwuka. I work for Bank of Industry, and I presently head the Creative Industry Group. Bank of Industry is the oldest development finance institution in Nigeria. We're over 60 years, and we fund businesses in micro, small, medium, and large enterprises. Our vision, our mandate is to support the manufacturing industry. But however, in 2011, the government confirmed the need to support the creative industry. And being a government-owned institution, Bank of Industry keyed into this vision, and the Creative Industry Group was established in 2011. These are the businesses we support in Bank of Industry. We support the food and agro-processing sector, health and petrochemicals, oil and gas, solid minerals, creative industry, technology and engineering, renewable energy. And in all these sectors, we support the micro, the small and medium and large enterprises. We have a special desk in Bank of Industry where we support women in business. And the businesses we support cut across all the subsectors that we support in all the enterprises. Next slide, please. Here is a creative industry performance since 2011 till date. In 2011, the creative industry was established in a Bank of Industry. We started with the quick wins. The quick wins we started with was 1 to 3, the content production infrastructure, and distribution. But interestingly, from 2011 till date, we've supported over 102. We've had approvals for over 102 projects, and we've disbursed to 71 projects. Presently, we have over 56 billion disbursed in the industry. Next slide, please. These are the sectors based on the disbursement position. We have 77.7 billion cumulatively for all the mapped out sectors within the industry. The sectors are as listed there. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, I go to the main focus of today. Services offered by Bank of Industry include but not limited to advisory services, advocacy roles, and financial support for long-term businesses. For the creative industry, we have two special funding windows for businesses in the creative industry: collateralized funding window and non-collateralized funding window. And the terms and conditions are the best for Bank of Industry because presently we take about 10% for all the tenured funds. Now, funding for support for the visual arts. From the presentation on one of the slides shown there, you could see that we've not started disbursement for those in the visual arts, but we have actually reviewed applications from them. We've been able to articulate the funding mix that could be very good for those in the industry. And we've looked at this funding mix. For us to arrive at this, we will look at what are the businesses to be supported. You are in the business of visual arts, and we know the various sectors within these visual arts. What are those businesses? What are your needs? Can you monetize this business that you want to borrow to support the business? What type of funding will be suitable for the visual arts businesses? Understanding the different funding mix and how to utilize the opportunity. First, we'll look at equity investment. How much are you bringing into the business? And what do you need to grow the business from the present state to the next state? Can you use equity alone to grow the business? Will your equity, the initial capital, be enough for you? And if you have need for additional funding, will it be better for you to look for other equity investors that will be interested in your business, borrowing from families and from interested investors? What about grants? How can you access available grants in the country and outside the country? The last funding means should look at debt. Debt should be the last funding opportunity you should look at in funding your business in visual arts. What kind of debts do you need? We advise that you look out for low interest rate debt with long tenor to give you the opportunity and opportunity to grow your business and be able to monetize those businesses. There are other type of support you could get within the industry, which is sponsorship. How will you use your product? How can you present your product to an organization so that the organization will invest or use that product for support? You have to understand the business. Review the impact of the additional fund you want. Will this additional fund make a difference in your business? You have to be sure that you can trace how the money you're borrowing will be coming back. Consider the cost of fund to your business. Will it be better to use debt or to use equity investment to support your business? Presently, the funding opportunities we have in Nigeria basically is the intervention fund from CBN and the first fund from Bank of Industry. Bank of Industry funding is 10% with long tenure, while the CBN fund is 9%. But however, there are other conditions to this funding. Collateral is also needed to support your business. And this collateral has always been the challenge we've seen in interacting with different people in all the sectors. But however, we also know that it is not the best for you to hold the business alone. You need partners to support you. You are the creative mind. You have the intellectual property. You know your vision. But you can also bring partners to own that business with you. Those partners could bring additional contribution in terms of funding and in terms of collateral you need to support your borrowing from the bank. Also, businesses could also be created based on expanding the ownership structure of your company instead of owning it alone. From experience, we found out that so many creative minds have ideas about what the product they have, but how to monetize the product and how to build a strong business relationship with the bank has always been the issue. the funding available for creative industry is the same, irrespective of the subsector. We've been able to support those in film and other subsectors, but visual art has always been an issue. But I believe if we look at the structure of not owning it alone, try to bring in other investors that will believe in your business, it will be easier for you to assess the relationship or build a relationship with any financial institution, especially a financial institution like Bank of Industry, that is a development finance institution, ready to partner with you and to grow your business. For other funding needs available in the industry, we look at crowdfunding. Is it possible for you to invite other investors that could contribute without having shares in the company? We've successfully handled such investment, and I think those in the visual arts should also think in that direction. Thank you very much. We are ready to take questions.
Do we have any questions in the audience, please?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sebastian De Bello. I represent Rooms Consultants. Usually, we are one of your BDSPs. We understand that the crowdfunding has it been legalized now. Before some years back, SEC has refused to give approval to crowdfunding. Has it been recognized officially now? That's my first question. The second question relates to the funding for the arts industry. We are aware that when they started, a lot of artists benefited from it, and they relaxed the condition that time. What are the times now to access it? This is available, and if it's available, the conditions?
The funding available for arts businesses is still the same. The issue had always been the collateral aspect, and that collateral is still there. It hasn't changed. Yeah, the crowdfunding, it hasn't been fully approved, but individually, it's in terms of looking out for equity investors, looking out for families and friends, those that will support your business, and that is done privately with the owners of the business, not through the bank.
Hello, my name is Yetunde Aino. Thanks for an interesting presentation. Something called Jades Trust, and we work to do business development support for SMEs in the creative industries. Talking about visual arts in particular, I just wanted to bring the example of it's of somewhere like TerraCulture, where you have a gallery, but in addition you have a restaurant, you have an arena, so that there are multiple streams of income coming in. And the gallery is somewhat subsidized by these other facilities, as an example of how the visual arts might also consider.
Okay. Thank you for the addition.
Just to add some information on the crowdfunding thing, I know there are sites that specialize in that, and they're mainly offshore. A lot of them are in the United States. And I know you need to have a bank account in the US where the funds will be sent to. So I don't know much about the regulatory part here in Nigeria, but they're mainly American companies. We can speak later after this period.
Thank you for your submission. I'm just wondering, when we think about the creative arts space, most of the artists actually don't have collateral. And so what ideas do you have? Are you, for example, with visual artists, are you willing to consider taking the artists' artworks as collateral? So we need some practical interventions, because otherwise it will still remain an area where we all collectively struggle to fund. So some alternative forms of collateral, or frankly, really looking at how we remove ourselves away from the idea of collateral for the artists and look at other measures of risk that will ensure that and in today's world with a lot of data analytics, it is possible to find other metrics to lend to people without requiring collateral. And it's most important in the creative arts space. So I think this is an area that we all need to apply our minds to and do something about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will start with the lending process. We give funding to limited liability companies. And if funding is given to limited liability companies, it is also advised that when you're building your shareholders base, if you're building your director base, you should have other partners that will bring in these aspects that is lacking in the creative business. You need collateral and you don't have it. But if you have one or two other directors on board, that could be their contribution to enable you access funding in the industry. Remember, one of the strongest points in the 5 C's of lending is character. And it's difficult for you to tell who you are today and who you will be tomorrow. We've done that. We have a special fund in BOI, a 1 billion fund for non-collateralized fund for content production. And we can tell you the experience, what we got thereafter. Those we actually believed in and we got confirmation about their character. A day after disbursement, they could not pick my calls again. So that C character is very important. It's only experience that could make you defend why you must get other investors that will believe in you. Don't own the business alone. Because if you have that collateral, we have repeat customers. We have customers that gave us collateral and they've come back a third time. We have customers that brought in other investors that also had opportunity to get real sizable funding and they've been able to do bigger businesses. So the first is for us to expand our director base, get other people interested in our business and have access, build a relationship with the banking industry. Thank you.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ido Shonaya. I'm the chairman of the Society of Nigerian Artists, Lagos State chapter. A few months ago, I think sometime last year, I approached First Bank when I heard about the DBN provision for the creative industry. And with my findings, what they told me then was that they are yet to get the modalities to disburse the fund. And the fund is supposed to be disbursed without collateral. That's what they told me. So, but when you're not talking about collateral now, I'm now trying to see, is there a kind of communication gap between the bank and the CBN, or what is happening?
Let me ask you, you said you approached the bank,
yes,
and they said they don't have First Bank,
yes,
and the modality was not ready.
Yes, that's what they said.
So how did you get the information that you don't need collateral for that? However, I'm speaking for Bank of Industry.
Okay.
In Bank of Industry, like I said, we have 2 funding windows. One backed with collateral and the second one without collateral. But presently, we've exhausted the first 1 billion we invested without collateral. So we want to actually review our position before opening that window again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Moka. That will be the last question. Any more questions, you can please approach her after the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I would like to say that your presentation was very insightful regarding funding for the visual arts. And I really hope this informs strategies for development in the visual arts for the future. Thank you very much. To give the next presentation on funding for the visual arts, public and private sector partnership is Odunayo Sonya. Please listen to her introduction as she makes her way to the stage. Thank you.
Odunayo Sonya is the Executive Secretary of the MTN Foundation and the head of the Planning and Customer Management team at MTN Nigeria. Her over 20-year career in corporate Nigeria spans education, financial services, and telecommunications. Oduayo is an alumna of the University of Abuja, where she studied political science, Lagos Business School, and the Institute of Management and Development in Switzerland. She also completed executive training at Harvard and Cornell universities, both in the United States, and she holds a John Maxwell certification. Prior to working with MTN, Oduayo Sonia was a manager at different times with Chartered Bank, Prudence Bank, now Sky Bank, and Standard Trust Bank, now UBA. In addition, Sonia is a professional forecaster and member of the Institute of Business and Forecasting, an expert in customer experience/intelligence, as well as an international speaker with several papers to her credit. Passionate about youth empowerment, mentorship, leadership, and nation building, Oduayo Sonia is a volunteer member of the Whisker Women in Successful Careers. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome Oduayo Sonia as she makes her way to the stage.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. We'll be talking about funding for the visual arts, public and private sector partnerships from the MTN perspective. Okay. Sorry, good. So just a bit about how we as MTN approach our corporate, what we call the corporate social responsibility. This is our wheel of CSR. For us at MTN is a mix of corporate social investments where we really believe that the success of our business is dependent on the well-being of our host communities. So from time to time we invest and we do give back. And we also internally as a company have encouraged our staff every June, the first 21 days to give back to the various communities using our own resources and our funds. The next thing is corporate governance. For us at MTN, that is very key, where we work institutionalizing ethical behaviors, the best standards globally, and just ensuring that the business is sustainable. And the last wheel really is the various, the value we get from the various products and services that we offer. Our core belief at MTN is that everyone deserves the benefits of a modern connected life. We believe that our job is to connect people, to connect them to their visions, their missions, connect them to knowledge across the world. And our sustainability vision really is to protect and create shared value for MTN and our various stakeholders through responsible environmental practices. A bit about the MTN Nigeria Foundation, founded in 2004. We started working in 2005. So effectively, from an operational point of view, we'll be 15 sometime later this year. For us, it's been about facilitating economic empowerment across different strata in Nigeria. We're a company limited by guarantee, and we have an independent board of directors. And very important is that we're funded to 1% from MTN Nigeria's profit after tax. And this is just, that's a map of Nigeria, and just to show that we've gone around the country doing many things. Next, please. These are some of the things we've done so far, and I think of great importance is under the arts and culture, where we talk about the visual arts and we talk about life in my city and my story of water. Next. Well, a case for the visual arts, just using the creative industry as a base. Of course, the visual arts is a sub of the creative industries, and taking information from across the world, whether from the United Nations General Assembly, where on the 27th of April, 2017, the UN General Assembly designated 21st of April as the World Creativity and Innovation Day. And 2021 has also been declared the International Year of Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. And this all speaks to the fact that the creative arts is very, very, important, extremely important. I believe that every human being has an artist in them. And that is the only thing that enables even an engineer to be able to recreate, because they first imagine. Imagination is a deep form of art. You first imagine and then you birth. So really across the world, it's clear that the creative industry is some lever that we can pull even in emerging economies to turn things around. This is just some information using UK as a case study where, deliberate focus on the creative industry has resulted in some form of growth contributing to the economy. In 2018, about 111.7 billion pounds, was what the creative industry in the UK contributed to, of course, the entire economy. Next, please. So the Nigerian example, really, we're a nation rich in culture, tradition. We have deep history in this country. Our diversity is also, when you look at the creative industry, it's very diversified. Many things, content. My sister from the Bank of Industry spoke to that, from content production to arts and crafts to entertainment and all of that. There was a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers that Nigeria will be the world's fastest growing entertainment and media market over the coming 5 years. This was a report in 2016. And I believe that a good portion or proportion of the entertainment and the media, the E&M, will be spoken to by the visual arts. Of course, we all know that Nollywood, according to IMF, is the second biggest employer in Nigeria, next to agriculture. And so the visual arts, we recognize the power that the visual arts, the power of transformation that it carries and is able to deliver within our communities. Next, please. A case for visual arts. This art piece won the Life in My City competition that MTN sponsored last year. And the gentleman that produced it made it from charcoal and pencil. I personally couldn't believe it, but it's a wonderful work of art, and that tells you how powerful art can be. There's a whole story behind this wonderful piece, and in Nigeria we know the problems that we have. We're a very young nation. We're going to be one of the, in fact, if not the youngest nation in a few years. We're already on that trajectory, where about 70% of our population are young people, people from maybe the ages of about 24 down. And so they have a lot of energy, a pent-up, energy that can be, if we harness it properly, we can use it to transform our nation. And art, for me, can be an outlet for that. We believe at MTN that art is a good outlet for that pent-up energy. Some of the things that we look at, when we decide to sponsor a particular exhibition or some form of art, especially the visual arts. So we have a 4-quadrant wheel. And the first thing is that we want it to promote the brand. We want the aspirations of our brand to connect with that particular program, because there's no point funding what you really don't believe in. So depending on what the theme of the visual art program is, what it's targeted to achieve, then we know if it's something we want to go into and partner with the artists or the group involved. The second thing, of course, brand affinity and media leverage opportunities for us. But very important are the things below, because all these points score differently. Some score higher than the others. So for us, social development benefit is the biggest thing that we look out for. How will it promote advocacy, because really arts is also about advocacy. It has the power to, like I said, transform through advocacy. When people through different and diverse forms of art begin, to promote certain causes, you find that before you know it becomes a movement. And so some societies have been transformed through that. So for us at MTN is about, the social development benefit. Does it promote a cause advocacy, youth development, civic engagement? For us, very important. And that was why for us the Life in My City exhibition took place around 11 states in Nigeria, and then of course the grand finale was in Enugu. So for us, very important, and we were high on the possibility of it generating more employment for other people and engagement for the youth. Production quality too is very key. So for us to support any cause, it has to be world class. It has to be, it can't be sub-optimal. It just has to be excellent. And I believe that art really is a form of excellence. So there shouldn't be any form of art that, goes below expectation. So those are some of the things that we look at MTN before we put our name behind or beside a cause of, in terms of arts and culture. This picture on the right is My Story of Water, and we partnered with Mrs. Alakija to on this initiative, and I'm sure a lot of us here have read about it. The exhibition's gone out of the country, and the children were engaged, teachers were engaged on how to teach using creativity. Those for us are the add-ons, they're the icing on the cake, not just the plain vanilla, but the icing on the cake that MTN believes, brings some form of innovation to the table. Next, please. Okay. So some benefits, when we talk about public-private partnership, it's clear. A lot of funding gaps the world over have been breached by public-private partnerships. And for us, it shouldn't be an exception. When my sister Cynthia from the Bank of the Industry spoke earlier, and we're talking about the gentleman that asked around the non-collateralized loans. And my own thoughts were that as a society, as a body, why not take up that challenge and solve the problem by yourself? What do I mean? There are many, you can come up with different algorithms today that enable banks to give out loans to visual artists, even using their artworks. But if there's no proof of concept, it will be difficult for them to do. So I think it's something that the body of artists should take up. There's a lot of technology that can enable you to do that. People borrow money now on their phones without collateral, and so I think it's not out of place if we look at a model that enables that. But that was just an aside. Benefits to the public sector, of course, for us is that the public sector benefits from this because we can channel young energy. It's a platform for civic engagement, like I said earlier, advocacy. It can become a form of entertainment, because that's something that we also need to get people into, to say, how do I, when I go for an exhibition or to an exhibition, it's something that entertains me. It helps forge a sense of identity and communities. The good thing about visual arts is that it helps preserve the heritage of any set of people. So I think from that perspective, the public sector stands to benefit. There's a whole lot of Nigerian history that maybe can be preserved if the public sector comes, in partnership with private sector to deliver solutions for the visual arts. Of course, the benefits to the private sector, I've talked about that. The benefits to birth, opportunities to birth new businesses. It's a platform for engaging critical stakeholders. And of course, for us, it does facilitate brand visibility. Next, please. Now, I think this for us is the crux of what we're talking about this evening. We expect that as much as the private sector will bridge some form of funding gap through maybe sponsorships, through some causes that are being invested in, the public sector, we believe, should enrich the school curriculum, some form of educational curriculum to emphasize, the arts within our curriculum. I know that there's a lot around STEM and there's STEAM, but STEAM is still gathering momentum. But everybody today wants to invest in STEM. STEM, yeah, technology allows you to leapfrog and develop. But the truth is, we need the arts to also survive. It can't be one without the other. So we need public sector to relook our school curriculum and encourage creative expressions through visual arts within the school system. We need them to enable us with public spaces where we can really put up visual arts that drive advocacy, and that also helps to transform our different communities. Of course, deliberate policy direction that promote a creative ecosystem. We've talked a bit about the non-collateralized loans, but I believe that there are many more things that the government can begin to give policy direction about, because it will grow our economy. How do we export art out of the country? How do we kind of regulate the market value chain so that the artist is not stranded? They don't remain poor while other people feed off their works of art. There's a copyright commission. How do we also use that to protect the talent that we have? There's a need to change public perception of art as elitist. I think today, going to the grassroots, a lot of people believe that art is elitist. They believe that only when you're very well fed can you begin, to talk about art. And that shouldn't be. It should be a way by which, we pass on our culture and preserve our traditions. Of course, facilitate value creation. We at MTN believe that, government should begin to take one community at a time and see how we can use art to beautify those places. It gives people a sense of value when they are in a place that it may not be the best of places, but it's beautiful. And so how do we commission, teams of artists to transform our various communities? Of course, it helps to promote tourism if we're able to do all of that. I've talked about international art theft. How do we get policy direction that helps this? And of course, I've spoken about the secondary art market. That was one of the pieces on display at the Life in My City exhibition we had in one of the states. Next, please. Just to show, this is how public spaces elsewhere in the world have been transformed, using the visual arts. And you find that there's some, I was watching a documentary on Sao Paulo on CNN a few days ago, and, the graffiti was featured. And I know there are issues with the government, they really don't want it, but people travel from all over the world to go see those things. And these are the things we need to bring to bring into our country, Nigeria. Next, please. Of course, these are pictures from my story of water that we worked on. Next. I think that's about it. Some pictures from the Life in My City Art Festival. I was asking after the guy who won, and I'm told he's out of the country. That's another thing we need to deal with. We wanted to him for one thing or the other, but we're told, he's not available. He's left the country. If we don't nurture and provide some safety and value for this set of talented people, they will leave. today we keep hearing about doctors and all of that. We hear about those because people are dying physically. But daily, these artists are living. They do one piece and they get called somewhere, and that's it. So we also need to deal with that. And I think on that note, I think the presentation is done. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the audience, please? Any questions?
Good afternoon. My name is Chino Obasi. I'm a brand strategist. I thank you for a fantastic presentation. While you were speaking, you talked about the youth population of the country and the bursting energy that could be harnessed into arts and be transformed into something that could be beneficial to the society. I agree with you, but I'm going to put this as a question and as a remark, if you don't mind. If you check what's been going on in the country, you realize that most of the things that we get from the artists are self-made. The creative industry, the Nollywood industry, where the bursting energy of the artists, and it is like individual things. But there has been no governmental effort, as it were, to be able to aggregate these thoughts, these energies, these creative people into a segment that you can evaluate and say, okay, this is what somebody was, I think it was a presentation that mentioned about the UK, what the creative industry contributed to the UK. About 2014, the Nigerian government captured the creative industry for the first time, but there has been nothing, that can put together the artists, the creative minds, in such a way that we can begin to say, yes, this is the creative industry, as it were. There's nothing in that regard. I know that MTN, you're doing your bit, but how do you think that can be achieved? And that is where I'm going. Thank you.
I'm aware that, I'm not an artist, but I'm aware that there are various bodies that have been formed. There are various societies and unions that have, that you find a conglomerate of artists in them. I think what we need to do is for the various strands to come together. Now, there's power in coming together. The government is not going to do that for us, most likely. We have to do a lot of things and the groundwork by ourselves. You talk about data not being available. The truth is, imagining an operations without data today is disaster. So it's not the government that's going to do that for us. We must begin to do it. Now, by the time we do it, so the Society for Nigerian Artists does it, the creative industry, maybe Nollywood does it, and then we can leverage, various platforms that exist. There's a lot of artificial intelligence algorithms being built by local Nigerians. When I say local, I mean, we are all Nigerians, that are being built. How do we harness that and put everything together? You see, if you don't have a structure by yourself, even if someone else comes, they can't really create a structure for you. They would only flow with what you have. So we must, as this group of people, creative people, decide where we want to take the industry to. Now, when we've decided where we want to, sorry, I'm using we like I'm an artist now, but it's okay. When we've decided where to take the industry to, then we can, through advocacy, get government to play catch-up with us. We can showcase ourselves to the world, Nigeria to the world. And before you know it, the government begins to say, look, we need to get into what these people are doing because they're creating some ripples. So for me, I would say it's in the hands of everyone who is a creative artists. We need to get together, the elder societies, coming together, forming one body, and structuring it. The data points, where do we want to collect data from? And there are many, there's an association, Data Science Nigeria. I'm sure they'll be willing to do stuff for the creative industry if they're approached. You know, so there's a lot, but we must do it ourselves. If we think government will come, we're not going to get anywhere. My thoughts.
I'm an artist and a designer. I just want to know what the steps are to approaching MTN. So, I mean, as regards the foundation, what is the process like? If I had an idea as regards maybe the educational system or sexual, how do I approach you with an idea of expanding some curriculum or whatever? What are the steps, basically?
Okay. So not too complicated. I would also encourage you, when you talk about the foundation, think about MTN Nigeria. MTN Nigeria is much bigger than the foundation, and MTN Nigeria does sponsor, well, one company, no doubt, but does sponsor a lot of arts, entertainment, and things like that. Just write a proposal to the MTN Foundation. You either send it by mail, or you drop it at the office at the MTN Plaza. I assure you it will get to us. We respond to every letter we get. Yes, it's not every letter we say yes to, for obvious reasons. We also have limited resources, but we will get it. And there are times that we feel, you know, a cause resonates or an idea resonates, and we refer it to the marketing team, who will take it up in some instances from there.
Good evening. My name is Emeka Amefuna. I'm an artist too. I want to go back to the spaces you talked about. First of all, you know, you mentioned the fact that people think art is elitist. And that's because most of the art we do is exhibitive art. We hardly do interactive art. And for you to produce interactive art, you need to have some form of support from some form of structure, like yours. You understand what I'm saying? I was thinking that what you would have told us is that you have space for ideas that can be pushed to you about particular spaces the artists could be funded to develop for beautification. You understand? Because we still have, you notice that there's beautification in Lagos State, but after being beautified, it's walled in, and nobody goes in there. So for me, the whole idea is lost. But I would be thinking that what we could have is a space where you have these creative structures all over the place, and people can still walk in and out of them, and even put graffiti on some. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. So what I'm asking is, would your foundation back something like that if it's pushed to you?
Well, I'll still refer you. I think I talked a bit about all of this. MTN will not do the work for the artists. You have to locate the space. We don't own spaces. You locate the space. We get all kinds of proposals. You understand? So it's not about committing to supporting or not supporting. Let's do our homework. Once you're able, if you deliver a compelling proposal, it's difficult for anybody to ignore it. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. If it's compelling enough, it's difficult for people to ignore it. I showed you a few things we've done. I'm sure someone will wonder, oh, you mean MTN sponsored or supported an exhibition? Oh, yes. You understand? So you have to do the work, excellent work, because we get these proposals in droves every day. You understand? Some you get 10 proposals all talking about the same concept. Nothing that lifts up, one and you say, oh, this is the one I want to support. So you have to, the resources are limited, and if you want a part of it, then you need to go the extra mile. That's the best I would say. But yes, please do bring along your proposals, and would look at them.
Thank you very much. If we have any more questions for the presenter, we can always meet her after the program. The last presentation will be virtual, on the business of art and socio-economic transformation in Africa, the Hatch Ideas case study, to be delivered by Yemisi Mokolu. She will be joining us on a video call, which will be set up shortly. Let's listen to her introduction as she comes online. Thank you. Also, we're streaming, to remind us, we're streaming live on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is @PointOfViewLagos. Thank you. You can also follow us on YouTube, Point of View. You can also follow us on Facebook, also at Point of View Lagos, and Twitter at POV Lagos. Thank you very much. You can check our website, pointofview.ng. We have a lot there. You can also find the videos of the past editions, the full videos, the presentations. You can request for presentations as well. These presentations will be available very soon, and you can, send in your requests or download them directly from the website when they're available. So, thank you.
Yemisi Mokolu is a highly regarded creative industries consultant and independent producer with a focus on funding and financing options for Africa's rapidly growing creative economy. She founded Hatch in 2002 to promote African arts and artists, and established Hatch Africa in 2012 to offer specialist support in developing the creative industries across Africa. Through her consultancy, she works closely with government agencies and private businesses, providing extensive creative business advice, mentoring, research, and training programs across Europe and Africa. These have included Bank of Industry in Nigeria, British Council, City University, Department for Industry and Trade in the UK, Goethe Institute, Institut Français, and the Nigerian British Chamber of Commerce. As an independent producer, she has produced some of London's largest African arts festivals and co-produces the Asabako One Dance Festival in Ghana and Oliver Twist, an Afrobeats musical. Please join me in welcoming her as she makes her way to the stage.
If you just bear with me a moment, I have to now change over to the PowerPoint presentation that I have prepared. Just one moment. And I hope with all the powers of technology, we now have a presentation for you. So, we've been working for the past year with King's College London to research and find out and explore the ways in which finance can actually support the growth and development of the creative and cultural industries. And this presentation is actually to share with you some of our findings. It's definitely still in the research phase, but there is a lot that we've already gathered that we're really pleased to be able to share with you as part of the session. But first of all, a little bit about Hatch Ideas. I do know that we've had a wonderful introduction. I just wanted to give you some images and just to give you a little bit more context about the work that we're doing. But first, I always like people to be able to follow our work by following us on across the socials. So if you have got your phone in front of you, you can actually go onto our Instagram, which is @ideas.hatch, and just follow through. There's loads of videos and photos on there. as well as on our Facebook, which is Ideas Hatch, and our Twitter, which is @IdeasHatch as well. Feel free to go through the images and tag us whilst I'm carrying out this presentation. So we're creative business and professional development specialists. A lot of the work we do is supporting people that want to make an impact for Africa, either economically, socially, or ideologically. And I'm just going to give you a few examples of the business development support that we actually deliver. So right now, we are working with Old Mutual and collaboration with the British Council in Zimbabwe, supporting 10 social entrepreneurs, and through a 6-month incubator. And this has been an incredible privilege and an honor to design this program, the end of which sees the supports the incubators to be able to gather investment and support to take their business to the next level. We're working with the Goethe Institute and also Institut Français across West Africa, in Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal. This is very interesting because it is supporting businesses at startup phase, but we are supporting them within their own countries, but we're also supporting them across countries and helping them to share experience, expertise, and create those links. In terms of the businesses that we support, we give a lot of bespoke support to, so there's Oliver Twist and Afrobeats musical is one case, whereby we were able to work with the director, Yinka Ayinde, to put together an investment package where he could actually get his musical from ideas into rehearsals and onto stage. Then there's Soul of Africa, who manufacture shoes in Ethiopia, and they sell them around the world, and we were again able to get them to a situation where their brand could be bought. Currently it's being bought by Vibro Barefoot, and it's incredibly honouring because they are now generating 10 million a year in sales. And Words of the Orisha is another project that we're working with, supporting them to get investment so that they can create an online web series promoting and creating this wonderful universe for TV about the Yoruba Orishas. Okay, so back to the presentation and the work that we've been doing in terms of financing. We work with a lot of businesses within the creative economy, and we found that in order for them to go to the next level, finance, there needs to have appropriate financing. Otherwise, we are not really supporting them to achieve their potential. This paper is very much, it's not about, what we should be doing or, what is actually happening. It's there to be able to get people to think about their role and to just give an overview of what's happening and some of the feedback that we've been able to find, and then bring these thoughts together so that we can create tools that are going to be fit for purpose and actually work for the creative industries. Right, so our approach to this piece of research was a standard approach. It's always good to kind of explain this out, is that we had to gather data. We did it through a series of interviews and questionnaires, and we were able to go to South Africa and to Nairobi and Nigeria to interview various different creative practitioners as well as investors. We were able to analyze the data and come up with some of our recommendations and some of the conclusions that I'm going to share with you as the presentation continues. So we spoke to 13 key people. Yes, it's not the whole story of the continent, but this is an ongoing piece of work. This is the beginning, and we very much invite yourselves to take part in it and give us your insights. And this is why we're so happy to be part of this conversation, so that we can get more information to enhance the work that we're doing. So the key findings that we have, well, the issue fundamentally is absolutely there needs to be an understanding by creatives about what investment is and what financing options that are available to them. Equally, the investment community needs to understand what the creative industries is and how it operates. A musical requires financing and has copyright and intellectual property opportunities that are very different from maybe fashion. So we can't necessarily create the same financing opportunities. Even though they're in the creative industries, these sectors act very, very differently. So there needs to be a real understanding from both communities about how the other operates. Similarly with the creative industries, when they're looking at financing, there are so many different financing options, from grants right through to investment and sponsorship. The creative themselves needs to understand the nuance and the difference between those financing opportunities. And now we even have crowdfunding, and people need to understand what that means as well. So what's our desired outcome? I think it's pretty obvious. We need to get to a place whereby there is a common understanding and there is an interface so that we can match the need to the right investment package. What are observations? So one of the things that people that kept coming up over and over and over again is that fundamentally the creative industries is actually a people-centered space. It is something that a creative needs to channel information that comes from themselves. And so we have to take this into consideration. So when we are creating our KPIs, our measuring tools, we really need to understand that we have to bring people into this. It's not just about the bottom line. And so we're now starting to talk about the triple bottom line more and more, okay? So we have to be in a situation whereby we're not just challenging and looking at whether or not they can make a profit, but we also have to be very mindful about the fact that a creative will come up with an idea that comes from their experiences. How do we capture that, and how do we nurture that so that it can be something that is of value in the marketplace? Fundraising and investment training needs to happen. We need to better understand, the creatives need to better understand financing. Equally, the investment opportunity, the investors also need to understand the where they need to give money, so they also need to be trained as well. There are some very typical funding stages. So for instance, when do you actually need money? We need to know how much you need and why you need money. So creatives as well as investors, there's a system that's actually quite widely known, whereby you can invest and you can provide support at the idea stage, and market validation stage, the growth or scaling up stage. When they've found out the minimal viable product, once they've tested it. But not everybody understands that. And so we need to get to a situation where we do. Business support is really fundamental. Now, what we do is we provide quite a lot of business support, but I think that there needs to be standardized understanding of some of the terms so that the financing community as well as the creative community have the same language and the same understanding and are supporting each other in the same space. So it's not the current situation is that financing is happening over there, creative is happening over there. And we need to come to a situation where they're taking place in the same space. And that's where the business support interface is really important. And as I was saying prior, having the same key terms and definitions and having a common language and a common understanding of some of the fundamentals. What do we understand as the creative industries? Do we all think, when we think of the creative industries, are we all thinking of the same thing? Do we understand it to be visual arts? Do we understand it to be encompassing of architecture, theatre, music? When we think about music, are we thinking about the person that's singing? Are we thinking about the studio? Are we thinking about the manager? Financing, we have to have a very common understanding of that. There are so many different financing opportunities, from, as I said before, from loans to sponsorship to investments and so on. And we really do need to have a common understanding of business support, where some organisations will be engaging with businesses at the idea stage, some are actually only engaging with them at the growth stage, and that needs to be very clearly understood within the environment, so that people know so that we can all actually know how to benefit the creative and cultural industries so that it can achieve its full potential. So what is our conclusion? Well, we need to have very, very bespoke and tailored financing and support within this industry that's fit for purpose. The industry is, as you will know or start to understand, is so multifaceted. There are so many different sectors all operating in different systems that they need financing that is actually going to be fit for purpose for them. So to kind of offer one type of financing, maybe right now the is grants, is not going to support all the needs, all the various diverse needs within the industry. So we need to come up with tools, anything from equity. So right now we're working on an equity crowdfunding model, which is there to support businesses at startup phase, but equally at growth phase as well. We need to have a situation where governments are creating an open environment for businesses within these industries, and then we also need a situation where the development agencies have a really clear understanding about their role within the growth of this industry. Right now, most of the money from the creative and cultural industries comes from development agencies, and I think there is an opportunity to streamline this and make it clearer and much more universally understood where their position is and how and what challenges they are overcoming by actually being within this ecosystem. And the truth is, everyone's very excited about the creative industries across Africa. Everyone's excited about the music and about the fashion and the film opportunity. But in order for this to actually grow and achieve its potential and get to the next level, our research has found that we definitely need to have universal understanding, clear tools for measuring the financial opportunities and investment that is required to support creative industries, training to support creatives to be able to better understand their financing needs, as well as creatives and the financial community coming together in the same space in order to overcome these challenges and to be able to create an enabling enough environment so that creative and cultural businesses can really achieve their potential and create those jobs that we know that they can create, and also champion the brand Africa that we're absolutely sure that we can. Anyway, thank you very much. I really, so happy to be able to present our findings. And please do get in touch with us. Tweet questions to me. Feel free to share your observations, and we will see how we can put them into our presentations going forward. Thank you again so much.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll be taking questions actually. She's online and she's waiting for us to ask any questions. Do we have any questions for Jumoke? For Yemisi, sorry. Do you have any questions? While she's coming up, I'd like to announce that on our website we have spaces for participation. So if you would like to give a presentation or participate on the panel or volunteer, if you'd like to participate in the coming editions, you can request to participate on the website. You can also request for presentations, like I've said earlier.
Just want to tell you how delighted I am that I didn't miss your presentation because I was running late and I was thinking that I might. I'm very excited because for almost 30 years I've been working on issues like the ones you have raised and have come to the conclusion that we really need to make sure that our craftspeople, our creatives, are given the support that they need, not only pure finance, but capacity building. And it's so great to see a younger person has gone out there and been out in the field in Africa and come up with what you have. And I would just love to work with you because I don't believe in, reinventing the wheel. I believe in collaboration. And I had an SME exhibition and investment forum in 2018. Many of the industries were created, and it just looks like we could do a lot together so that I don't have to spend money to go and do the studies you've already done. And definitely in Nigeria and some other West African countries, I know the people and the organizations, and I would love to work with you on making this thing happen in my lifetime. Thank you.
Once again, I happen to know Yemisi in person, and I know she has been this business for over 10 years. I want to ask her, what are the efforts she's making to work with local, what I call support services here, like Sweden, to build capacities of the artists here. Secondly, for her to share her experience with local funders here. Our lady from the Bank of Industry mentioned the fact that the first 1 million new artists, I'm sure it was not trying to deceive you. Many of them did not want the money back. That's why it was, I'm sure, because as a PDSP ourselves, we were first involved with the Bank of Industry as far back 2006, when we started the cooperative funding. That's because we train people, we go to a cooperative, and then get them loan. When we are targeting them, everybody at the class, they come. 1 o'clock in the morning, they meet them. They check the stories. So the artists union themselves, they have to educate their members. And when they get money, they try to pay back the money. They try to block the chance for themselves and those from behind. As the biggest people that could do, I'm aware that one who took those who took money, because you need to pay the money back. That's okay. They're coming the day, we're going to stop each other. So as a PDSP, we have to be able to share our experience and see how those who are providing funds for artists, how they can reduce their risk, how they can encourage them to pay back the money, and how they can encourage them to build their capacities locally here based on our experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. My question is, there's a lot of difference if you're talking about visual art, access to markets and funding, from if you're talking about movies or music or comedy or even drama. In Nigeria, the sense is that, these are very, isolated areas, and there are no two ways, no same way of raising funding for, someone who is doing large cultural pieces, someone who is doing installation, compared to someone who is basically doing comedy.
So that's gone. We can get in touch with the Hatch case ideas, the Hatch case study. the Hatch Ideas case study through their social media, their website, their Instagram account, to get answers to our questions in the future. Thank you. We're moving on to the panel discussion now, themed Transforming Africa Through Culture, Funding and Strengthening Policies, which will be moderated by Mrs. Jumoke Sonwo. Her introduction will come up shortly as she makes her way to the stage.
Jumoke Sonwo is the co-founder and creative director of Revolving Arts Incubator, an alternative art space for multi-creative engagement and contemporary arts discourse. An accomplished photographer, she holds a bachelor's degree in English Studies from Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria. With a growing global audience, Sonwo's works have been exhibited in New York, Brussels, Dubai, Lagos, Sudan, Addis Ababa, Benin, Chad, and Ghana, as well as been published in several local and international magazines and journals. Her work, titled Belle, was shortlisted for the HIPA 2012 Beauty of Light Award in the UAE, and her VR film Lagos at Large was nominated and featured at the 2019 International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam. Jumoke Sonwo is a member of the X-Perspective Black Female Photographers Association, American Photography Association, and Invisible Borders Trans-African Photography Group. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming her as she makes her way to the stage.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and once again, I would like to welcome you to the conversation. But without further ado, I would also like to call on the panelists. Yvonne Ike.
Internationally respected investment banker Yvonne Ike is Managing Director and Head of Sub-Saharan Africa, XRSA, at Bank of America Merrill Lynch. She started out as an auditor with Ernst & Young International and has been an FSA registered representative since 1994. She was a Managing Director at JP Morgan, where she spent 15 years until 2009. Ike has also served as CEO West Africa of Renaissance Group. Yvonne Ike is a trustee of the Bridge Leadership Academy, Christopher Collade Foundation, and the Dangote Foundation. She is also a non-executive director of Guinness Nigeria plc. Passionate about contributing to Africa's development, she is involved in several initiatives, including African Gifted Foundation and Women for Women International. In 2007, Ike was recognized by the Queen of England as one of the top 200 businesswomen in the UK to make a significant impact in society. A well-known collector and supporter of the visual arts, Yvonne Ike has contributed immensely to the success of major art exhibitions and events, such as Positioning Nigerian Modernism at Tate Modern London on the occasion of Ben Nwonwu's centenary in 2017, and Ellen Natsui's Triumphant Scale at Haus der Kunst in Munich, Germany in 2019. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage.
Femi Akisanya.
Well-respected independent financial advisor Femi Akisanya is the chairman of First Ally Capital. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Lagos and an MBA from the Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Akisanya is an associate and merit award winner of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, an associate of the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers of Nigeria, and a licensed dealer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. His previous experience includes stints as a trainee accountant at Arthur Andersen & Co. and as a chartered accountant at Andersen. Akisanya also worked at First City Merchants Bank, rising to become general manager and head of corporate finance. In addition, he has served as director of City Securities Limited and represented CSL Stockbrokers Limited on the National Council of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Femi Akisanya is one of the founders of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and has been actively involved in the process of modernizing the securities market and establishing the investment banking profession in Nigeria. An avid art collector, his well-known Femi Akinsanya art collection is one of the finest, embracing traditional, modern, as well as contemporary arts from Africa. Please join me in welcoming him as he makes his way to the stage.
Jubril Enakele.
Jubril Enakele is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Ion Capital, an African-focused investment banking firm. Prior to Ion Capital, he was the CEO of Zenith Capital Limited and Director of Corporate Finance and Client Coverage for Sub-Sahara, excluding South Africa, at Deutsche Bank AG London. His experience also involves stints at Standard Bank in London and Citibank NA/Citigroup Global Markets, London and Lagos. Jubril Enakele is an alumnus of Said Business School, University of Oxford, London Business School, University College London, and University of Calabar in Nigeria. He holds memberships of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, Nigerian Institute of Management, Institute of Credit Administration of Nigeria, and Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. He is also an associate member of the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment, ACSI UK, and is approved by the Financial Conduct Authority of the UK, FCA, and the SEC in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Jubril Enakele as he makes his way to the stage.
And Chijioke Nwagbute.
With 20 years of professional experience across various energy and utilities projects across Africa, Chijioke Nwagbute is a partner and the Global Enterprises Tax Solutions (GETS) leader for West and Central Africa at PricewaterhouseCoopers (PwC). Prior to joining PwC, he was Regional Executive and Tax Director for Sub-Saharan Africa at General Electric, with the responsibility to manage GE tax compliance and provide advice on tax structuring and tax planning for all GE businesses in the sub-region. He also worked with KPMG, where he led the Gulf of Guinea tax desk, providing compliance and advisory services to companies operating in the region in the areas of oil and gas, power and mining. As a key member of the firm's oil and gas practice, he provided tax advisory services to companies in the upstream of the oil and gas sector. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome Chijioke Nwagbute as he makes his way to the stage.
There's some disparity in the definitions around the visual arts. So I wanted, the panelists to actually put this at rest, by sharing, what their definition is of what is visual arts by your definition.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to keep this simple. I think if you say visual arts, you are talking of paintings, sculptures, maybe installations, and some elements of performance. And I suspect that the reason that the organizers of this event narrowed on visual arts is that it is that area, I think, of the arts that is less obvious in terms of how you can finance it. Because more often than not, the visual arts does not lend itself readily, to commercialization from the point of view of the producer and the buyer. Okay, the ones that have value in terms of trading in the secondary market is probably maybe half or 1/4% of all work that is produced. Okay, so I think that there needs to be a different set of conversation around how you can support that section of the creative industry. Thank you.
So I completely agree what you said, what both speakers said. But to expand on your last comment, in 2018, the global art market was valued at about 67 or $67.4 billion. So let me repeat that. $67.4 billion. To put that in context, Nigeria's foreign reserves is under $40 billion today, right? So art is business. Art is big business now, and I know a lot of the purists and artists will not like me saying this, but if we're talking about funding, we need to consider art as a business in order to attract funding. So my submission today, I will be coming at it from the angle of how do we get funding into art, into visual art, whilst treating it as an asset class. And I think that's where the conversation should go.
Not sure what I should add when everybody has said it all, but I think for me, there was a bit of confusion for me in terms of the interchange of words and interplay of words. You know, we talk about creative industry, we talk about visual arts, and you know, if you're looking at broad definitions, it would include photography and filmmaking, in the definition of visual arts. So also, when you talk about creative industry, people zoom into the big four, which is film, music, fashion, and then they tend to call technology part of the creative industry. I mean, it depends really, because for me, technology is an enabler. But if we want to talk about visual art in the context of which was communicated to me, it seems to be more like, what you just said, when you talk about painting, sculptures, installations, that for me would be then a more narrow conversation to have, because people don't quite understand it. So you probably might see someone saying, I'm coming to fund the creative industry. In his head, he's thinking film and the rest. And this is one part of the industry that is really lacking, because you don't even understand that this is actually a significant part of the creative industry, which is, and if you're looking at the definition of the visual arts, you need to be able to then say, visual arts, here's the real definition of visual arts. And don't say, because I've put films in something, that means I've covered the whole gamut of visual arts. So I think we need to kind of narrow down our thinking and say, if this is what we're specifically focusing on, then we should be able to speak to it, because visual arts is broad.
Absolutely. Yes. So one of the reasons why I was saying, trying not to have a narrow definition is to your point, because with the arts, there is an ecosystem around it. And just to Jibril's point about us thinking about this as a business or as an enabler, I absolutely agree. So if you think about Morocco, for example, Morocco is a city that was made up from around the Medina many, many years ago. And what they decided to do was create somewhere where people could come and converge. And arts and culture was a big part of that. And today, the GDP of Morocco itself, Marrakesh, excuse me, so I meant Marrakesh, forgive me, not Morocco. The GDP of Marrakesh itself is $120 billion, of which half of that, about 50-something%, is services, and which includes arts and culture. So if we just narrow ourselves just to visual arts, which is a good thing, we miss the ecosystem opportunity to position this as a nation-building activity, to position it as a business, to position it as something that attracts others to us, out of which not just the artists, but an entire ecosystem benefits from.
Thank you very much. I think the narrowing down is actually due to the blanket financing policies that currently exist. And I think in going further from this, we have to give clear definitions about what visual art is in order to go forward to actually have a proper conversation from it. So back to you, Yvonne. I wanted to ask about Bank of America, which believes strongly in that art matters and also supports more than 2,000 visual and performing arts organizations worldwide. Can you share some of the specifics of selection and also funding these organizations?
So yeah, as you said, Bank of America is a huge supporter of the arts, and we do it through three major pillars. One is where we simply sponsor arts initiatives. For example, in London at the moment, we're preparing for the Andy Warhol exhibition. Bringing it back home, we sponsored we sponsored an event for Gerard Sokoto's works in South Africa. It takes me to another part, which is conservation and restoration. So as part of that same initiative, we also helped restore the JAG Museum in South Africa. So I talked about sponsorship. I've mentioned conservation as well, art conservation. And another bit is what we call art in our community, which is around just sharing artworks across the community and engaging artists in a more holistic way. The last pillar is actually art as a philanthropy, also as a charity, where we give to artists. And I'll speak about the criteria on that later. So it's something that's very important to us. We do a lot, but we look at art much more holistically across the border.
So how do we then localize this? Because we find that art is still very elitist in Nigeria. You find that a lot of the artists, even though they produce work in the communities never get to engage their work because they often come into, for example, areas like Victoria Island, Ikoyi, to come and present their works. So how can we begin to think about art as a communal effort that also includes the artist's immediate community and actually transcend, fund artists to be able to do work within their communities?
One of the best ways to do that is working around the world, is street art. So using street art to promote visual arts in our communities is one of the most effective ways of doing that. And that's one of the areas that we at Bank of America are supportive of as well. So that would be the most powerful, most cost-effective way, I'd say. Another important thing, which we cannot avoid, is just the museums, and again, thinking out of the box about museums and thinking about where we place them and how we use them in today's world. It does not have to be buildings. It doesn't have to be buildings just simply in the more affluent parts of town. A real culture of art speaks to having installations and things that reflect as museums all across our communities at all levels of the social strata.
There's been some intervention from artists, in creating alternative spaces in their communities to actually address some of these challenges of presenting work. How can artists also kind of access, local funding within their communities? Because there are people there who are supporters of music, and all these other more prominent genres. So how can we get supporters to begin to look at artists within their communities?
I do think this is where the private sector comes in. Okay. I think that, and it has to be a partnership that the artists and the creatives do together with people like us who understand some of the criteria that is required to get projects funded. And what that means is that we need to package together some of these initiatives and make, to Jibril's point, the business case or to make it attractive and viable to organizations that can then sponsor it. And there are two elements to that. One is that if we make it, because if you look at funding, and this was mentioned before in the MTN presentation, all corporate organizations are very similar in that. What we want to see is we want to see something that speaks to our own agenda as corporates. We also want to see what is viable and clearly shows an impact and a benefit, however that is identified. We want to see a proper governance structure around that. And we want to see how much is viable, how viable it is. Those of us that understand that in the private sector must come together with the creatives to create more of these initiatives that make a compelling case to be funded. The people that can fund them are there. We just need to create enough of them, and this was mentioned earlier with MTN. So once we have those, working with the creatives, for the creatives, for our community, then these are one that we then need to go further into finding private sector parties that can support it. But importantly, continue to lobby to the public sector about the need for the right policy environment, financing infrastructure, and also the right support mechanisms for the initiative as a business or as a tool for development for our society.
Thank you, Ms. Takinsoya. I'm taking off from Yvonne, mentioning, that preservation and conservation is also one of the ways by which, we can support, culture, and heritage. You are the chair of the Adunni Orisha Trust. How has this experience been, in your opinion, sourcing for local funding for that type of project?
Okay, thank you. First, a correction. I am chair of a campaign of the trust, which is the Save Our Art, Save Heritage, which is specifically raising funds for restoration of the artworks in the Osogbo Groves, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, we had a campaign that we launched in 2015, to try and raise money specifically to refurbish and restore the artworks there. And this was done under a pressure of urgency because those artworks were created by a commune of local artists gathered by Susan Wenger, an Austrian artist, as many of you know, who came to live in Nigeria. But they were artists, in my own view, making artworks that was an interpretation of Yoruba art and folklore. But because they funded this effort from their own resources, they used the cheapest materials that they could afford, which is, mud, clay, and some bit of cement, and very little, maybe iron steel for structuring and all that. And during Susan's lifetime, if anything fell down, they just went there and rebuilt it. But the group of people that work with her are now dying away. I think we probably have the last one or two of them are still alive, but they are not able to work anymore. So what we were trying to do was to get those artists, who were there originally, to train and mentor younger people, to complete this work. But the fundraising itself, has not been spectacularly successful. And nevertheless, the work, I'm happy to say, has progressed, to a very advanced stage. And touch wood, sometime, in the course of this year, I think that work will be completed. But I think for me, what this underlies really is that we need to rethink the whole infrastructure and approach to funding arts and culture in Nigeria. And I go back to the point I made earlier, that when we talk of creatives, Nollywood, filmmaking, maybe some aspects of photography, are more readily packaged as businesses, and those ones are finding support. And I think that the Benenwu Foundation, in concert with the Society of Nigerian Artists, I believe that they are probably more interested in that narrow focus, us, the visual artists. How do we get funded? And I think that the approach to funding that sector has to be different from something that is purely driven by commercial motivation. The government has got to lead. And part of the reason why we're in this stage is that over time, our government has just abandoned their responsibility to fund culture, and the arts in society, because we have become too focused on our pecuniary profits. Everything is, if there's no profit, I'm not interested. Whereas the function of this sector of the arts is really more like an enabler. A society, grows. And when you have creativity that is unleashed, it's been proven, that it's research that when children grow and they are encouraged to study music and they're exposed to the arts and you help to discover their appreciation for the finer things of life, it encourages them to be more creative. And it has implications in science and technology and all of that. So basically, I know the day is fast spent. This area of the arts has got to be funded, I think we need through policy initiatives. And if I might just give one or two quick examples, and I think Yvonne has mentioned one of the things that a major corporation does now. But even for CSR in Nigeria, companies have done this in a very perfunctory way, excepting a few major organizations like MTN and the rest of them. What needs to happen, therefore, is for the government maybe to make it a policy initiative to actively campaign that companies should take CSR seriously. Some other thing that can be done is the way in which the MTN Foundation is funded. That I, in my active practice as financial advisor, I advised an indigenous E&P company. And one of the things that they have done from day one was to dedicate 5% of their net profit, which goes into a trust for the benefit of the host communities. And I can tell you that this one company, Niger Delta Exploration and Production PLC, they have operated for 13 years without any disruption to date. But there is a trust, which is the company funds it, there is governance around it, and the host community have a voice in what projects get funded and all of that. Maybe something like this can't be mandated for all companies in Nigeria, maybe giving 0.5%, 1% of their profit into a fund, because that kind of thing is now available that can be utilized, But I'll let others speak.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Chijioke because there's actually the National Endowment Fund, which is currently, there's a bill that has gone to the House. And one of, I think subsection 3 of it actually specified, that companies can actually get tax exempted, if they, if they support, the fund. But in your view, and especially working across Africa, how many companies actually take advantage of this opportunity to support the arts, while still, yes.
It's okay. When Oliver was inviting me, I wasn't sure if he was inviting Chijioke, the tax professional, or Chijioke, the head of the PwC Creative Industry Desk, because I double hat. I double hat in the sense that I do tax, but also I head the Creative Industry Desk. And we've done a lot of work in the creative space. We've some of the information, media and entertainment outlook that she also mentioned in her presentation, and even the last set of data that was spooled out around the creative industry, working with some of the DFIs. And in all the things we've done, in all the work we've done in the creative space, one thing I've found out is lack of knowledge and understanding. That is the biggest issue creatives face. So the people that are meant to finance you don't quite understand, what you do. They don't understand your value chain. They don't understand your go-to-market strategy and everything. In fact, they just don't understand. I'm not going to mention the government official, but the top government official that, when I was working with the Minister of Information on something around this space, said, is creative, is it not Ake and Popo? That was his understanding of what it was. But back to what you've asked for. So that act has been in place since 1991. It also demonstrates a lack of understanding. It talks about a contribution to the fund or the endowment as a tax-deductible expense, right? Meaning that companies can actually contribute to that endowment as a tax-deductible expense, which can be done easily. And you'd find out that if I know that this ties into my CSR strategy, which you've kind of talked about, I can then say, okay, you know what, just to manage my host communities or to just give a public perception that I'm a great company, I will take this amount and donate to the endowment. But the question you need to ask yourself is, how is the endowment managed? How many people have put money into it, right? How many people are even aware of that endowment and ability to, access the funding from the endowment? The way the act has even been set up is a bit funny because of the funding. So let's take the not only the companies, let's also consider the fact that states are meant to contribute to it. What is the basis for the contribution of the states? And then if we contribute, then the question is, how do we then ensure that, because we're very individualistic from a Nigerian standpoint. So if Imo State I'm contributing, I want to know how many people from Imo State are going to be considered. So, you know, the thing about laws and the laws we make in Nigeria is that I'm not even sure of the people who actually, you know, participate in making those laws. Are the creatives, are they part of the lawmaking process to say, this funding you want to put together for us, does that make sense for us? So, in summary, it's there. There's an act there. And I think what we need to be looking at is how can we get, you know, government to more or less kickstart that act, bring out guidelines around, you know, the contribution of funds to the endowment, bring out guidelines around how people can access that funding. Many companies don't know about that act. I can tell you that for free.
Just as Yemisi said earlier, there really is a sense of urgency and importance to this matter that means to me that we cannot rely on government. I really beg to differ on that point. Because a couple of important points to point out. This act is important, but it does not compel companies to deploy their CSR funding, whatever it is, into visual art development. As corporates, they can choose where they want to invest in CSR. So if we want to have a targeted development of the visual arts sector in our nation, it has to be more private sector led. Okay. Because it's just a much longer journey. I'm not saying to ignore it completely, but there must be an initiative that is more targeted to say, how do we support this sector? How do we create things that are fundable? And then what are the innovative initiatives, starting with the DFIs in your report? Because relying more on DFIs, relying more on the corporates that want to do it, relying more on other institutions like that, and even private individuals, it will give a more effective kickstart than waiting for the government to figure it out. They're not investing in education.
Sorry, very quickly.
Okay. Very quickly. Okay. So you go to a DFI, they'll still have a government arm to it. I think you're right. You're totally right when you say, you know, it should be private sector driven. But you also need to consider that most companies, first of all, you can't compel me to put aside a certain portion of my profits to support the visual arts. But you can put a sweetener, which means if I put aside that portion of my profit, it is tax deductible. It is different from a net after-tax deduction like you've talked about, because that is an erosion of value to the shareholders who would start asking, why are you taking aside a certain portion of this? So it's an ongoing conversation, really.
Thank you very much, okay. So back to Jibril, I wanted to ask you, you know, the visual arts are actually, as Chijioke just defined, you know, it's kind of like the orphan, you know. And I think this is tied to value, because at this point, people or the government and also the private sector don't see the immediate value of the sector. What can be done? What can artists do to raise their value?
I think I figured it out.
Excited to hear this.
No, I've been wondering what the problem is. The market is $67 billion and we're treated as orphans. And I've figured it out. Initially, I thought it was infrastructure. But I think in addition to infrastructure gaps, we keep treating visual arts as a CSR project. It is not. We keep waiting on the government. We cannot. Yes, the government has a part to play in terms of policy. But let's face it, the country is running on the deficit. Most countries in Africa are running on the deficit. The government is not going to fund it, and even if they tried, maybe not adequately. So it's left for the private sector. So if the government is out of the way, it's left to private sector, right? And private sector is mainly corporates and individuals. $67.4 billion. That's sales. I'm not talking about CSR and other stuff, right? The US accounted for about over 40% of that. US, UK, China accounted for about 80%, over 80% of that. Africa was 0.001. Why? We're rich in culture, we're rich in talent. Why? I think one of the things that we should look at is the broken ecosystem. The fact that we're asking artists to raise money doesn't make sense. It's an indication that this ecosystem itself and the infrastructure that supports that system is broken, right? The artist, it's not their business. The artist's business is to be an artist. The creative's business is to create. The galleries, those that curate, there ought to be the infrastructure behind them to handle all these things, but that's another conversation, right? So how do we get funding? First, we have to treat art, and I'm sorry, I'm going to offend the sensitivities of many here who are purists, but we need to treat art as a business, right? I know there's a place for CSR, but you need to treat it as a business, profit and loss. So if you're going to the MTN Foundation, you're going to, maybe not you as an artist, your gallery or representative, there has to be a strong case, not just from a business point of view, but also from a CSR point of view. So let me talk about what corporates should be doing, right? So corporates, and we have examples in Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. We have Deutsche Bank. Deutsche owns over 50,000 pieces of artwork in their collection, some Nigerians in their art collections. Let's talk about how many corporates today have own art collections. I mean, I know we have the Nigeria Stock Exchange. They're setting a fine example. We have, I think, Access Bank as well. But how many corporates? So I think from the corporate standpoint, if you start thinking about art as an asset class, your mind shifts. Let's talk about the individuals and collectors as well. How many collectors do we have? The difference between us and the international market is just the collector base. It's demand and supply. You have more supply and less demand. What happens to the price? It goes down. So let's not talk about the value in terms of the artist now. It should be, okay, so how do we get collectors into the market? How do we help them realize that, look, instead of buying a new car, buying a new house, or maybe investing in fixed income, you may want to diversify your portfolio a bit and have a bit of it in the arts. And I'll say one last thing before I know other people want to chip in. The U.S. market accounted for over $3 billion or $30 billion of art sales. But what's unique about the U.S. market? There's the opportunity for art financing. And if you're looking at financing, anecdotally, accounts for about $20 billion in the market, right? That also helps collectors. That helps art funds. That helps galleries. Here, where the pools of capital, and if you're looking for investment projects in Nigeria in the ecosystem, it's not just about the artists, it's about the different infrastructure touch points. Okay, now, let's assume I use art, because someone did ask a question about using art as collateral, and there wasn't really an answer. But if I were to take art as collateral, where do I store it? There is no dedicated art storage in Nigeria, period. No dedicated art storage facility. So if you're looking for a project to support in the ecosystem, there's that. There's no dedicated logistics provider for art handling. There's nothing on carbon dating in Nigeria, at least not that I'm aware of. Valuation services. Today, if you want to value your artwork, you probably have to go to, okay, let me not mention names. You have to take it out of the country to value your own art. So where is that? I'm not saying the government doesn't have a part to play, but like even I completely agree. I think there are opportunities for the private sector to step up, right? And only when you have all these pieces joined together will you start to unlock funding. It becomes easier. And then the artists can focus on art and everyone can get on with what they're doing.
Okay. Speaking of contribution, so in 2017, the National Endowment Funds in the US rose to about 155 million, to which they invested in grants for small and medium-sized organizations, 40% towards activities taking place in high-poverty neighborhoods, and 36% towards organizations that reach the underserved population. Exactly. So in itself, and from that, they were able to raise about 30 billion. So again, it's about building the ecosystem. How, as a business advisor, how can you advise businesses to begin to create a model that would actually create an ecosystem that will support the artists? And I know you've just mentioned it now, but how can we begin to actually have a structure in place? Where can the businesses go to for advice, to actually set up, these businesses?
There are dedicated art advisors in Nigeria, and yes, there are. I could mention one of them, but yeah, of course. I know Lasmara does some good work there, and there are others, right? And it's important that education plays a big role in this, and so even artists, art collectors, museums, everyone needs to educate themselves a bit more on this. But to your question about advice, I think it's one. I'm not allowed to give investment advice on art, so I can probably make a suggestion. First things first, I think it's important that you get an art advisor. I would strongly encourage businesses to consider art as an alternative asset class. Until that happens, it becomes difficult to invest in it. It will continue to be a pity project or a CSR-funded project. It shouldn't be. And I think, yes, the government has a role to play in education, tax incentives, tax breaks, even the museums. I think the museums, personally, I feel the museums need to have, they struggle to get funding, but there needs to be selection committees, different governance structures that run the museums, even outside the government infrastructure, even though they're government-funded or state-funded museums. I think that's a good place to start as well. But to answer your question a bit more directly, if you're looking for advice, please go to an art advisor.
But can I just, I think there's one thing we also need to understand about Nigeria, the economy, and the reality of artists, right? I know it's all well and good, we talk about the corporates and the rest, but, I'm an artist, and this is now direct feedback from our study. I'm an artist. First of all, even my materials to be able to even operate as an art, paint, or whatever, I do not have them. I can't afford the materials, the canvas and the rest. I do finally get to paint, and I want to sell. Obviously, I'm not selling to a gallery because I'm not going to wait or go through that whole process. Either I put it on Instagram or I go and find someone who I can sell to directly because I need to pay the bills. And I also want us to kind of look at the reality of the Nigerian artist and know that, look, at this point, you have to ask yourself, you can't be financing or anything. It's either you're looking at grants or you're looking at some level of patient capital to give them to actually help them take off. Then even if they're going to start painting or whatever, the question is, who is going to take up these artworks? Now, if you look at the galleries and the rest, the people who are actually able to create some sort of rarity for the artist where you start looking at enhancing the value of the artworks. Many of them, someone talked about TerraCulture. The gallery part of that business cannot support itself because there's it needs to start looking at other, she uses other forms of the business to support it. So if we look at the art value chain, right, and start looking at how we can, start, improving on that value chain, to be honest, you can't be looking for a loan type financing or anything that they have to pay back. It's either you're looking at grants, you're looking at, it's not necessarily calling it a pity type of project, but it's an industry that needs a takeoff grant. And this has happened for other industries. The people in oil and gas, the people in manufacturing, they've gotten intervention funding. They've gotten grants to help them take off. If you're looking at the economic recovery and growth plan of the country and you're saying the creative industry, of which the visual art is part of it, they need to be able to be funded one way or the other in a manner that would allow them to grow. Then, as in a more mature stage in their business, you can start looking at loans and other types of equity that would require some payback.
And to the final question, because all of what you've said now requires artists being on the table. How can we get artists to actually become stakeholders and be able to negotiate, either with the private sector and also with the government as well? So I start with Yvonne.
Okay, so I'm going to sneak in a response to that one. One of the ways that I think we can do that is to follow examples from around the world. For example, in the UK, you've got the Arts Council, which is private sector led, but works very closely with the government. So what the private sector does there is work with the artists to create an agenda, and then they go and lobby for federal government payment, and they fund other parts of it, including grants. So none of these solutions that we're all discussing are mutually exclusive at all. And part of what, and this is where the private sector can sit down and figure out a way to take all of the different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle to make it work for creatives. And when I say let's consider art as a business, and probably same for Jubril, we're not saying as a real commercial business, but as an initiative that is not just about dashing somebody money so they can express themselves. It's about the fact that when we support the visual art industry, the country benefits. And how do we articulate that as a business case? That is not just about shillings and pence, but is really about economic development, social development, and all these other things. So if we look at the Arts Council, that could be one way where we involve the creatives, they have a seat at the table. I beg to differ about them just doing the creatives and somebody else worrying about the finance, because in every model where that has existed over time, my observation has been that the artists do not benefit, particularly financially in their lifetime, from the fruits of their labor. And I have a serious problem with that. So they need to take responsibility for it. They need, again, it's about partnerships, it's about collaborations, to say, okay, I don't really understand this, but there's a level of which I must take responsibility and come at a seat at the table and bring my finance friends and my collector friends and the galleries and the auction houses and all the stakeholders that individually make this work, and that they take responsibility for driving the agenda as well. They've got to do that. Otherwise, they'll continue to be the orphan child or stepchild, as we referred to them earlier, which is not where we want them to be.
Okay, well, thank you. What I'm going to say is to look at some other aspects of this issue that we haven't spoken about. Financing is not just about somebody giving the money. If you think about it as a product, I think the artists can participate directly in focusing on quality, so because what drives demand, is works of art that are compelling. That is something that is extraordinary, because when we talk about, art as business, all this, the market, the $70 million and all that, if you look at the statistics of the number of artists who are represented compared to the quantity of artists who are practicing, it is probably not more than the top 2 or 3%. I think we need to put this thing in proper context. Now, the other point I will make is that living artists, a few of them have broken into that cadre of highly demanded artists. What makes the difference is the quality of what they produce. And I'm saying to artists in this room that that is one part of the equation, that a good product more readily lends itself to financing. So I think artists should go back and focus on quality of what is being produced. A lot of the art we see now, quite frankly, as a collector, is not up to scratch. I
Okay,
think
so
we
I'm
can
just
do
going to
better.
chip in very quickly, Mr.
Okay.
Akinsoya. So I think part of art production also includes research,
Sure.
documentation, and all of this requires funding. So if we do want artists to improve the quality of the work they currently produce, we also have to invest in research and also in documentation of the works.
I agree.
Yeah, so from my point of view, I guess you all can tell I like numbers. The market, global market, employed 3 million people, right? And in an economy where we're working towards creating jobs, I think the visual arts in particular is a strong area that the government and private sector needs to focus on. That's one. And the second thing I would say is an area of the market that is being not neglected, is being overlooked, is the online market. And I think you mentioned sales on Instagram and other social media platforms. Online sales in 2018 accounted for about $6 billion worldwide, about 9% of the art market. In Nigeria, outside Atirama, I don't know if that still works, we have no online platforms. Everyone has to sell their works themselves over social media accounts. But there is a market for that. That is bypassing the intermediation of galleries and other infrastructure in the art system and going directly to the end user. So it's not a bad thing. And that's a market that continues to grow and is heavily supported by millennials. And if you're looking at Nigeria's population, we have over 65 people under the age of 25. 65% of our population is under the age of 25. So I think that's where the future is, online.
And actually picking up from that, because most of the millennials are online, so there's a better appreciation of art even at that level. But a couple of things I think need to be done. I think education is very critical. Art education in our schools, being able to start at that level to start building it up. I think a bit more investment needs to happen in that regard, essentially around that. From the corporates, I think the corporates, there has to be a bit more, I think it has to be a bit more targeted and a bit more specific around how they would participate in this particular area, because you see some of the collaborations where people take artwork and put in their offices, in hotels, actually picking up from artists who actually help them, to what's the word, beautify their hotels, and those artworks are actually for sale. So we need to start thinking about alternative ways of actually taking our art to the market, and it's not just necessarily just the galleries or the or online, but alternative ways, and partner with the corporate and say, I'll give you all my artwork to, for your office space or whatever, and then that gives you an opportunity to start actually marketing the artwork of these individuals. And it's something that you can look at as part of your, CSR is almost sounding like a bad word here, but it could be part of your CSR where, banks with multiple branches just say, I'm going to exhibit the artworks of so and so. You see it, you like it, you buy it. Just let's start thinking about different ways to start monetizing our art. But please, for the artists, as much as you want to sell directly, you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't go through the proper channels as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on this note, we're going to open up to questions.
My name is Madu C. Chikwendu. I'm a filmmaker and a public policy advisor. First, you know, when the dog does not bark, the goat will continue to eat his inheritance. It is the artists that will solve their problems. It's not other people. I don't know how many artists I have, but I bet there might be less than 40%. Okay? And I am very happy with the panel because I see a lot of money people there. First and foremost, in developed countries, based on global best practice, you don't really see retail banks, I introduced myself, financing the creatives directly. You have more venture capitalists who put together a fund, maybe that to finance a slate of films and so on and so forth. But we need to start with enlightenment. And when we say enlightenment, it's not just about teaching art at the primary level. It's about appreciation. Now, I ask you, how many Nigerians think that it's interesting to go and look at paintings in the gallery? Very, very few. And so, the galleries and museums may not be viable. So we need to begin to get people to change. You can imagine that my kids were playing. I have a sculpture of two wrestlers. And someone overheard them saying, these stupid wrestlers. Meanwhile, one of them is an artist, he draws. So this thing needs to change. And then, most of the time, when we talk about skill sets in the creative industry, we always think about the front of it, the creatives. What about the managers? You need the managers that manage talent, because that's how it works in developed countries all over the world. The artist might not have the skill. Is likely not to have the skill to manage his finances, to manage his business. So anytime we talk about training, you hear about training, I'm a filmmaker, like I said, maybe for cameramen, directors, producers. We need to create the managers that will manage that talent. That it is those managers that will also have a better understanding of how financing works. It is those people that will put them together. When you hear about movies being made with $300 million, it is the talent managers that put together the package of the star, the script, and then they take it to the studio that finances it. It works all over the creative industry. So from now on, if we talk about training, let us consider that you need people at the back end who understand both sides, because there will never be complete understanding. The banker, the financier would never understand the artist completely. You need the middleman who is able to walk the fine line between the two. Okay? So in conclusion, I'm just trying to say that I do not agree that the artists are the poor cousins. As a matter of fact, when the MTN lady was speaking, I didn't hear her mention financing films. GTBank has a very robust policy on financing fashion. Okay? So it is artists that need to come out and create a fund. And then when we talk about tax, we lost an opportunity last year when they were reviewing the tax laws. I'm happy the tax man is there. He's done a lot of work in my industry. But it's a whole gamut, it's an entire package of rebates, tax holidays, deductions. It's worked in Korea, China, Vietnam, in a lot of places. So it's not just policy. A policy is not a law. A policy does not compel. You need laws that will make it obligatory and mandatory for corporate organizations to support the creatives. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ade, and my question is directed at Jibril and Yvonne in particular. As a founder that's in the process of closing my initial round, we've heard a lot of references to, money was borrowed or taken away and not returned. We've tried to fund people in the past, non-collateral, and they didn't return or they didn't pick up their phones the next day. My question really is, a remark and then a question. My question is, that is not the basis for lending money or giving money to anybody anywhere. So it's almost like saying to me in the UK, you can't get a mortgage because number 15 did not pay their mortgage last month. I'm sorry, I'm not number 15. Or, number 15 moved in, put their furniture in, and then 2 months later they abandoned the property. I'm not number 15. I go to the bank and merited or analyzed on my own merit. You have a good credit history, you have a good idea, you've done this in the past. How do we not get penalized for our big brother's mistakes? Thank you.
Merci. I have nothing against my very dear friend of MTN. But as the director of Alliance Française de Lagos Maganaga Center, I would like to say that GLOW is not bad also. We work with them for Life in LCC. We are not enemies. But no, seriously speaking, look at that. Look at this. Look at this place, one of the most beautiful Alliance Française in the world. It is a pure example of what we discussed this evening. This is a purely private investment. Sponsorship, investment. We have this place to manage for 10 years for free. That's why we are opening for arts and culture. That's why we are doing this kind of events for arts and culture. Everything we do here is for free, and we have a art gallery, and we try to also to promote young Nigerian artists. So this is another example. And it's very interesting because all this evening we didn't speak about this kind of things. This kind of thing is only possible in Lagos, I tell you. This is the only example of our network. So this is possible. You can do this kind of things. And the last, very, very small comment about what you said. In France, just as an example, in France, when you buy a piece of art, when you buy a painting, you are not taxed on it. So it's not calculated on your fortune. And also you have this system, you spoke when you're in a company, you have a percentage to help education and also to help culture. And of course it works. Merci. Don't forget GLOW. Huh? Thank you.
Good evening. So I just recently moved to Nigeria. As a business professional, I'm also an artist. And I think the art world suffers the same problems all around the world, no matter where we are. So the problem, I think, and I want to ask you this to the panelists, we talked about financing, we talked about public, we talked about private, but what about actually giving the artists the power themselves to go and look for funds? How about telling the artists, you have the power to go and look for your own funds. We can help you, but other people can help you too. You know what I'm saying? It's like foreign aid basically. You basically throw food at people without telling the people, look, you can produce it yourself. How about telling the artists, you have the power to go and look for your own funds, and you don't have to be dependent on me. You know? I feel like the corporate world and the public world have kind of they can't let go of this grip of power, and so they're telling me, oh, the artist has to depend on me. So, I don't know, what's your take on this?
My question really is, in the last 10 years, there have been quite a number of initiatives in the art scene. No, I think this is okay. I don't think there's a problem. Oh, okay. And Mr. Atkinson, I did mention that even though there wasn't funding for that particular Oshogbo project, it's been done, There's been some auction, there are some art fairs, there's some people claiming that they are doing biennales, even if it's not your idea of Venice. I just want you to rank, because you sound fairly despondent about the scene. I want you to look at those things and rank and say, well, if we're going to 10, considering those initiatives I just mentioned, this is where we are. Are we at 0.5 or are we at, say, 2.5? That's the question. Thank you.
Sorry, I have two scenarios to paint here. So I love what you said about the quality of art, and that's the reason why people aren't selling. I think we have to kind of walk backwards here. Going back to where most artists get their education from, which is university, and they have to write JAMB. The parents, talking from someone, I've taught at a school that has elite children, and even in the midst of those children, parents come and they're like, they don't want their children doing art. And these are people who pay school fees up to millions. So walking out backwards to people who maybe aren't in that class, the lower, Nigerians, earning Nigerians, and they have to go to university. They go in there now, but they get into a curriculum that doesn't teach them quality of art because there is not many, teachings on material. So all they know is acrylic, oil, watercolor, and a few of them is sculpture, right? So I think the core, even though we want to really push out, the CSR, we need to now think very deeply about how the educational system. I've been to, a lot of art talks and seminars, but there's not much conversation about how the government can actually go into even private universities and put art as a course. Most people now eventually have to travel out of the country to study art or fashion design, which even myself I had to do. But at the end of the day, we come back and we have all this knowledge, and then the economy is not where we should be, and then you see most of people wanting to migrate out. So now I'm thinking as to some of the art colleagues I've met who have studied in public universities. They don't have the knowledge that maybe some people have from studying abroad, and they have to deal with maybe that competition of the other artists who does have this knowledge. And then they don't obviously have knowledge on business, which is something that is actually not being taught in the schools now, as for art business. They just teach them how to present, even with portfolio, they don't teach them how to do portfolios. So these are the things that actually do make an artist, going through all these stages. I'm thankful for some organizations like Relay Gallery that would organize mini, talks, and they would educate people about how to create portfolios. But this is even just in the arts, even down to design, graphic design, all these other bits, which is not necessarily what we're talking about, but the educational system is so weak, and that is where the beginning really is. Even when we talk about 14-year-olds, they have desire to paint and desire to do so many murals in Lagos. I met a very young boy who wanted to paint in Surulere, but he's not seen it before. He doesn't have an idea, because it's not even being taught in schools like that. So yeah, how do we? The question is how do we approach the government with these things? Because there are some. Sorry, my question is long. There are some minor places, schools that teach art and design. Yeah, but they don't have funding to even reduce the prices of their fees so that people who don't have privilege can study.
Hello, good evening. I don't have a question as much as an observation. First of all, I wanted to speak about what you mentioned about teaching, about artists having responsibility and them not being skilled enough to finance. And I would say one of the major problems is a lack of education. And a lack of education really may not, a formal education system really may not be the best place at this point in time. In today's day and age, more and more things are going digital. Information is being democratized. And rather than creating a solution of, let's go to schools, let them, or even events like this, the fact is, some things you can find online. If there was a place, if there was a way for people to get their information online, if there was a way for artists to be educated about their rights, for arts collectors to be introduced to new forms of art, a way for people to express art and learn about art that isn't necessarily physical, but yet they can interact with the work like we do with social media and other, and other places, and it'll be really, really helpful. And my second point is, art is subjective. It can be a very, very difficult thing to classify, to know, even when you talk about quality, because at the end of the day, beauty many times is in the eye of the beholder. But one thing I can say is art functions differently from many, many segments of society. Artists are, to use a very, very vague term, like water vapor. If society is like water, liquidus, it moves into different molecules and stuff like that. Artists are water vapor. They're vast. They can't be classified as much. That's why finding structures that suit vapor, they have to be a bit looser. They have to be a bit, they have to be able to mold to fit the shape. And so what I'd like to say is, rather than look for one size fits all, it's better to look for a sort of in-house ecosystem for the private sector to gather together and form an ecosystem, rather than looking at the government this or that. It's an ecosystem that needs to be built and developed. And the answer may not be physical, it may be digital.
Question.
My name is Ayola. I just want to know, I know there's no insurance practitioner on the panel, but I'm thinking, how important is insurance in building some of this infrastructure that we're talking about? Because Jubril mentioned storage, and I've been doing a bit of research on that myself. And the truth is, it's really, really very important that storage facilities, especially dedicated to art, needs to be there if we want to talk about secondary market value and all those. So I just want to know, how, from the panel, how important really, besides what I've read on my own. Is the role of insurance.
Okay. I'm going to address the question of financing art and the track record of defaults, I would say. The reality of the way that the finance world works is, in order to look at what you do going forward to a particular class of, whether it's asset class or borrowing group or borrowing class, it's unavoidable that we do, as financiers, look at what has happened historically in the past. That said, so to completely ignore what has happened in the past is not something that's frankly possible, just practically, yes. That said, we are in a world today where there's so many ways of testing for the character test that do not require you to put down collateral. There's so many algorithms. The technology has advanced so much. For example, the extent to which you allow your mobile phone to not be charged or top it up, as some of the simple algorithms that add into how your attitude to money is and how your attitude to even just a sense of responsibility are. So I think part of, as we think forward about the solutions about funding artists, and to the last person's point, really we need to be thinking about solutions that are much, much more creative and much more in favor of where the world is today. Because we really do not need to be thinking about collateral as the only way to lend to artists at all. I'm going to also answer the gentleman's question about, no, not insurance, no, Jubril is taking that, about where we rank the creative art. If we're sounding despondent, I apologize on behalf of myself and probably all of us, because so let me explain my own, if I'm sounding despondent. I'm absolutely clear about the incredible opportunity set and just the extent of, I think it's unquantifiable, the value and the potential of arts, visual and creative, in our society. And not just for the artists, but actually more broadly for society. I'm super clear about that. But the visual arts, and I use the word BART advisedly, the visual arts and a number of, and even the creative arts in our society, we're punching below our weight. And it's not just about finance, it's about some of the other things that we've talked about today. So if you hear despondency, it's not because of, I would like us to please separate out where we see the arts in terms of its potential, its value, etc., versus what we're actually doing today to actualize that value. And the despondency comes from the latter, not the former.
May I say, talk about insurance? I think in this day and age where art is increasingly treated as a global commodity that is tradable across markets, insurance has become even more important. And there are a lot of international institutions that provide insurance, either retail or wholesale. And there are one or two in Nigeria that do as well. I'm aware Custodian does. I think AXA Mansard is developing a product that mirrors what AXA International does. But there are deeper issues around insurance. Let me give you an illustration. Let's assume I'm an unknown artist. I'm a young guy, right? And he buys my work. I've never traded at auction. There are no public records of my price point. And he buys my work, he takes it to go insure. The insurance company will say, how much is it? Because there is no system here to value work. So the entire ecosystem is interconnected, interrelated, and if one part of the ecosystem does not function well, everything breaks down. And that's one of the issues with insurance. But there are other financial products, right? The international market has moved way beyond just insurance. They're talking about providing guarantees to auction houses, to collectors who buy. There's the art financing, where art itself is taken as collateral. There is immense opportunity in different aspects or different parts of the value chain here, or the ecosystem, that a lot of people have ignored. And I think that is where private sector comes in. Because if you're able to come in and take advantage of the opportunities around and within the ecosystem, some of these other things will fall into place.
And on that note, thank you very much, Yvonne, Femi Akinsoya, Jibril, Chijioke, thank you so much.
My name is Tunde Arugumati. I'm Associate Director for Benel Foundation, and I believe I have to step in a bit because we're far overrun time. I just wanted to use this opportunity to thank all of you, because for you to have stayed so long, you think that this is worth your while, and having the quality of faculty, if you want, that's here to have taken this on. It's so wonderful, and I think they all deserve a fantastic round of applause, please. And while they're at it, I also like to mention that in terms of sustainable social investment, we're looking at most of the topics that have been discussed and the wonderful interjections from the floor. And we hope to have this ecosystem contraption coming up, whereby we will be able to take this on as much as possible and be an interface as much as we can between government, civil society, and the private sector. So, and I'd also like to apologize. Oliver was called for an emergency. We actually were expecting him back, but unfortunately he probably hasn't been able to, and he did ask about it, and I just kind of texted and said I should send his apology, and I hope we will see more of you at other editions of this, and I would like to thank you very, very much for your time out, and hope to see you again. Thank you very much.